1935, the Lions win the NFL Championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
There you go. With the crack of the bat, we are off. It is Detroit City of Champions, episode 37? 37.
Man, we were making progress.
I know. So we passed 35. I was going to make a deal out of 35, episode 35. And then we blew right past it.
I numbered my first books.
It was so exciting.
I know. I numbered my first books up to 2000. I number all my books. So I numbered the first books up to 2000. And when I first started out, my the number 1935. I was so hard up for money that I actually had to sell copy number 1935 to somebody. Somebody was like, they were only going to buy it if they could get number 1935.
Right.
And I was like, dang, man. So I blew past that in my book. So it's like, we gotta do what we gotta do, man. We gotta march forward. We gotta get past, we emphasize the episode 35 forward of the show, 1935.
It is 1935, an amazing year in Detroit sports, in the United States sports, and world sports. Just the championships and the amazing stories that have unfolded that we're working our way through. The Tigers and Lions now playing with the Red Wings.
This is our last episode. We're going to be talking about the Red Wings.
We're in the
not for good, but for this, for the narrative part of this.
We've got to the playoffs, and then we're holding the final game of each.
Exactly.
To kind of do as a trilogy. I think
we're leaving off with the final.
We got to figure out. We're going to give a show to each, or talk all about 3 and 1.
Yeah, we want to do because the big thing is that if we go 10 episodes without talking about their championship, it doesn't show and that's how I wrote the movie too. Is the final not the final episode, but we're going to do all the championships in one episode to bring it all back together to show how close they all were together. Because we started this last year, so if we go a year without be in between talking about the Tigers championship and the Red Wings championship, you might not get the same impact as by seeing them like this day they did this day they did that, like the rapid fire succession of how they all came together at one time. But the hope is that by the time we get there, everybody's going to have such a nice foundational understanding of all the stuff that went on and all the different players and people that were involved, that when we get to that final grand finale of all of it, then everybody will be right there with us and knowing, they'll know the names, they'll know the people.
Yeah.
So when we're going through the rapid fire, you'll understand, all the stuff that happened before.
So we've been talking about the dismal beginning of the Red Wings for their season, and then the back and forth and up and down with the Blackhawks all the way through.
Yep.
And they made it. They made it to the playoffs, and that's where we are.
Yeah, so we've really gone through the entire franchise history with the Red Wings leading up to this year.
Oh,
including Jack Adams himself and all the. This is they've gone through ups and exactly.
Because you sent me some images to show for tonight,
yeah.
and like you said, there's this one image of the 1927 Ottawa team that impacted so much of early hockey. From that championship in 27,
specifically to this story,
and then specifically to the
if we really wanted to talk about the impact of the players on that 1927, Ottawa team,
that's another book.
Entire
Slow it down.
I'm saying if we did for the entire NHL, that 1927 Ottawa team, I could show you how. Every player on that was an impact around the entire NHL. There's so many Hall of Famers on that team; it's incredible.
And you highlighted that, so we're gonna look at that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah,
but I'm excited about that. So we laid a bunch of groundwork, but we're in the playoffs, right?
Now we're in the playoffs. The last episode we talked about the Montreal Maroons, who I've mentioned is like my, if it was my second favorite team is the Montreal Maroons. I have a great deal of respect for that organization. They don't exist anymore, but they were a powerful organization. They were the number one team in the Canadian division, and they just because the Wings beat them in the first round. It doesn't take away from it was first the best team in the Canadian division versus the best team in the American division. So really that was like technically the championship.
Yeah.
And they actually viewed it as the championship of the NHL at that time. But but it wasn't for the cup. The cup was was the best team that made it through all of it. And so the Wings beat the Maroons. Of course, we talked about in last episode the longest game in NHL history still to this day. Went out 6 overtime periods, the equivalent of 3 full games. 3 shutouts in a single game for Normie Smith. We talked about some of the other people that didn't. Buckle McDonald never he has not gotten the credit he deserves in the modern day for how great he played.
Right.
Nor Wally Kilrea, who we didn't go too much into in the last episode, but we will a little bit more today. But because he's like also one of my favorite players. But anyway, so we talked about how they got through the Maroons series. They beat this. By the time they got back, first 2 games were in Montreal. They won both of them, and then on their arrival to Detroit, we read an article about how they were like heralded as heroes. I mean, they're coming off the train, and there's hundreds of well-wishers. They're all excited. They're all cheering for the Red Wings, which is like, and Adams even said himself, this is the first time anything like this has ever happened in Detroit for hockey, where the fans are actually greeting them at the railway station and excited. And so, just a little postscript on that component, where the excitement of how this team is really the birth of Hockey Town, and the Detroit's love of hockey is the final game of the Maroon series, where they played it at home. It was the 3rd game of that Maroon series. All these games were best of 5 series, and so their final game against the Maroons, which they won. Was the largest crowd ever at Olympia Stadium up to that moment.
All right,
and so that supports the idea
standing room only,
exactly, literally,
shoulder to shoulder.
They said there's 12,000 fans plus at for a stadium at the time that seated 10,500.
Right,
and it was literally capacity and then some. And
in 1935, 36, the fire marshals weren't so strict.
And so actually writers, the writers at this time actually looking at the page where they're saying, the writers actually saying this was the largest crowd to ever, playing in front of the largest crowd ever to watch hockey at Olympia Stadium. The Red Wings won, and they beat Montreal, and they moved on towards towards the Stanley Cup Finals.
And I want to say this, that this was a precursor to enabling the largest hockey crowd ever assembled at the Big House.
Yeah.
When that happened.
This is all a precursor of all NHL interest.
Right. And I'm just saying, when they played at the Big House, and it was the largest, at that point, the largest hockey crowd ever.
Yeah.
At U of M.
This is totally the precursor. This is the year, like I've said it before.
So it's funny because
this is the team that really that put hockey on the map in Detroit.
Because you asked me what I'm doing, I was like, I just I'm done with kids and school's out. And everybody's, oh, hey, what are you doing for the summer? What are you doing for summer? I'm like, as everybody's like, oh, you doing nothing? I'm like, I do a ton of crap.
Yeah, sure.
I'm on the radio stuff and then DJ stuff, and then I go, I have a few podcasts I do, and then they're like, a podcast, and I'm like, yeah. And they go, there's one about sports, and they're like. And then I give them like the nutshell about it, and I'm turning into you, man.
Yeah, good. Yeah,
I start ramping.
I know
up.
You've gotten bit by the bug of this thing, and once you get bit by the bug, you're hooked on it.
And
there's something about this story that.
And I start telling people, and they're like, "Really, really, really?" I'm like, "Yes, really." Yeah. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So that's where we are.
There's not a ton there's not. This story is not like it's not obviously not well known. I'd go as far as to say it was forgotten.
Yeah.
But the few people that do hear this, that do know about the story, and that do, that when it finally sinks into you, when it finally sinks in just how incredible this story is, when it finally you get bit by that bug, and now you're like, this is like the greatest story I've ever heard, and you want to know more as much as you can know. Like Tom, our buddy on the show, Tom got when I first met him. He was the first person that I'd ever met that had been bit by this City of Champions bug, just like I had been, because he was like obsessed over it. And that's what I'm like, I was so happy to meet somebody else that I wasn't like kind of crazy, because I was so like, I'd already at that point, dedicated 2 years of my, 2 full years of my life to this thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was just nice to see somebody else that had been bit by it. But then the other night when we were all talking about it, you, myself, and Matt, I could see the other night you guys were definitely bit by that bug. You're like, who can we talk to about this story? Who can we bring this out?
I know.
To?
I want to get Tom.
You guys are bit, man.
I want to get Tom back in.
We'll get him in. I got to talk to him.
I want to get Tom back.
Yeah, he's had some things going on, but we'll get him back in. I'll call him up this week. We'll see. I know, I do too.
People have been listening to the podcast. Tom is a very colorful man with he's got years of experience,
Tom,
and I know he listens in.
So we love Tom. We miss him.
Tom, we love you. Then whenever you can come play, door is wide open for you to be here, part of it. Anytime.
Yeah.
All right. So where are we at? What are we doing?
So what we're doing is now the Red Wings have.
Wait. All right. Like, subscribe, leave a comment.
Yeah.
Wherever fine podcasts are sold. All right, now what are we doing? All right, go.
So the Red Wings have just finished up with the Maroons series, and because they steamrolled through the Maroons and just they swept them.
Yeah.
And so what that did was it left a gaping hole in their schedule because, as we mentioned,
right,
there was a three-way tie, like a three-way tie in the American division for second place between the Bruins, the Blackhawks, and the Rangers.
Okay.
And so that was like that created like a semifinal. And then the winner of that, there was a whole bunch of stuff that went down, and then there was a quarterfinal between the Maple Leafs and the Americans, the New York Americans. And so the Red Wings are now idle for a week. The Red Wings are idle for a week, so they're waiting to find out who their next opponent's going to be when this whole dust settles on all this. And so when I was reading about this originally, it conjured up the thoughts of the 2006 Tigers. And for those people that are fans right now, if they remember the 2006 Tigers, the Tigers had found themselves in a very similar situation in 2006 because the Tigers had swept right through. They were they were going to the World Series, but they had like 4 or 5 day layover. Like they were like the hottest team in baseball.
That could throw you off your game.
Exactly. So the age old debate was, what should that team do? Should they be like go on full on practice and full on like game mode and try to stay in shape?
But you don't want to injure anybody.
There you go. Yes. Do you practice and do this like this and stay sharp and ready and hot for the next series because you're playing so hot?
Yeah.
And so the 2006 Tigers, they didn't. They basically sat back, and when the World Series came, they came out. I mean, there's nobody can deny how flat they were. They came out, and they played against the Cardinals, who'd been just through this absolute scrum for a couple of rounds in the playoffs. Like they were, hanging on tooth and nail. And the Cardinals were coming off of this, just dog
do or
fight.
die.
Yeah, like extra innings dog fights every single game. And they're coming in to play the Tigers, who've been kind of like hanging out doing interviews for a week. And it just, you could see that you could actually see the difference on the field.
Right.
So Jack Adams in this era, he went the opposite. Jack Adams believed he didn't want to lose a step for his players. He didn't want to, so he was going to practice them. And
Jack was a man, man.
Totally. And so what was cool is that, as we also mentioned in last week's episode, the Olympics, they swept through their series as well.
Right. So they're creeping towards their championship too.
Yeah, exactly. And the same night as the Red Wings advanced past the Maroons, the Olympics also advanced.
Nice.
So now Adams has got two teams in the playoffs, both idle. So what is there to do? Right. And so how to keep his players for both teams sharp. And so this is where it gets so cool, man. Because what Adams does is he makes a trade.
Oh, my God.
Okay? He issues a rare playoffs trade between two teams.
Right.
Okay? And this is like, when I was first reading about it, it was like just so cool and it was like stunning, okay? So he trades his first line, his best three guys.
Right.
Marty Berry, Herbie Lewis, Larry Orey.
No, we've been talking about those guys all season.
He trades them.
They're the hinchpins.
He trades them.
What?
He trades them to the Olympics.
He trades them to the Olympics.
Yes, and he also sends Normie Smith as a throw-in goal, a guy who's already had 3 shutouts in the first game and 2 periods of a shutout in the second game.
Is this just
the hottest goalie in the NHL?
Yeah.
He trades them.
Is this just media shenanigans? Or
Exactly. Well, because what he does, he trades them to the Olympics, and so those guys suit up for the Olympics.
Okay.
And then the guy he gets in return for the Red Wings is the Olympics goalie, Turk Broda.
All right. So what's the story
Turk
on
Broda
Turk?
comes up to. That's where we're gonna get it. So Turk Broda.
I put up the image of Larry Orey, Marty Berry.
They're all wearing
Herbie
Olympics
Lewis
jerseys.
Wearing their Olympics jersey.
Yeah, so they're
and they're
playing
being
for the
traded
Olympics.
for Turk.
For Turk and Normie Smith. They throw in Normie Smith, the Red Wings goalie, for Turk. For one guy. Right? For one guy.
Tell me Turk's
story. So Turk Broda, okay.
How long has he been with the Olympics?
This is his first year.
Okay.
And he's led
been
them
there most of the season? And
he's been their starting goalie all year.
Fair
and
play.
the Olympics went all the way through the season. First place team. They're sweeping through the playoffs. Turk Broda is an absolute stud of a goalie. Okay?
Right.
He is an absolute stud of a goalie. And so much as he is stud of the goalie, as a goalie, that just to kind of, I'll talk about his future a little bit.
Right.
Because Turk Broda is one of the best goalies in the history of the NHL. Okay. And so this is his rookie year was with the Detroit Olympics in this year. And so just to give you like a, for the rest of his career, a quick rundown of his statistics. Okay. So after this 1936 season, he was sold to the Toronto Maple Leafs for $7,500, right? which
it's
is
these like $1935, sounds so small.
Well, yeah, but even in comparison to
but just in the previous year, how much did they do to get what kind of
Sid
money?
Howe and Scotty Bowman, they paid $50 to get
and then
those
the Tigers
guys.
did another $50,000,
$100 for Mickey.
$100 for Mickey.
Yeah, but at the same time,
$7,500. I was saying,
but it's okay because Heck Kilrea, the Red Wings had bought him for $7,500 as well.
Okay, all right.
So I think that was the price of a good like kind of mid-range guy back then.
Okay,
a solid player like this. And and the Red Wings had Normie Smith. What are they going to do with Turk Brody? He's he's up and comer, but they didn't really have room for him because Normie had just rampaging through
Played
the playoffs.
every game
we're in the greatest playoff performance of all time.
Right.
So Broda was somewhat expensive. But Turk Broda, when he would go over to the Toronto Maple Leafs, he would eventually win 5 Stanley Cups as their number one goalie.
Wow.
5 Stanley Cups, 2 Vezina trophies as the best goalie in the NHL.
So how do did they let it slip between their fingers? But we had
Normie.
And Normie was like,
Normie's a stud. You can't go wrong. Yeah. So it was like you can't really keep him on when you've already got a number one goalie. So they sold him. So I don't look at it as a loss, like it was a poor deal of Adams.
Right.
I think he knew what he had. This guy came out of the gates in his rookie year and took the Olympics to a championship like it was nothing. Yep. And he traded for him from the Olympics to the Red Wings in this practice series.
Oh, so it was just
it was for the fun of it. It was a practice series.
All right, so
it was like for the fun of it. Yeah.
So it was photo ops and
exactly.
All right,
so the top line got you're
freaking me out here. You sent me this picture and I'm like, what the hell?
The top line is
These
traded.
are like the guys traded to the Olympics.
Sure, and that's and even at the day it was for the fun of it.
But that might be fun to have the top line over there
for the minors,
playing the rest of your second, third, and fourth line to keep them on their damn toes.
And what better way to keep your team sharp than they have a bunch of studs on the Red Wings already, and they got to play against the Olympics with an improved. With the top line.
And the Olympics aren't slouches to begin with.
Absolutely not. And then and the Red Wings got to play against Normie Smith, who's the hottest the hottest goalie in the NHL.
Oh my God, what a fun year.
Absolutely, that's what I'm trying to say.
This is amazing. This break was probably just ridiculous.
Yeah, so we got Turk Broda, the minor league goalie, playing for the Red Wings, suited up. And so so Turk Broda, Hall of Famer, elected to the Hall of Fame in 1967, and ranked by the top 100 players of all time, number 60. So one of the top best goaltenders ever. He would go on and have this incredible career. But what's very rarely known, and it's always just like a footnote. Whenever they talk about Turk Broda, he is 100% associated with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
That's why one of the pictures I put on the graphic is they have a statue of him at the stadium, the hockey arena.
But he got to start here, baby.
He got his start with the Olympics in this season. This is our guy.
He was a wing. He was a wing for a day or two.
Yeah, it was a wing for a day or two, and he was a Detroit Olympic. That won that was going on to win this IHL championship.
And he was one of the 33 championships.
Yes, exactly.
In
so Turk Broda, like I say, he is part of this story as well. You see, so
I love Turk.
I know, me too. So that's why I had to talk. I wanted to devote a little bit to Turk.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
anything else about Turk?
No, we're good with that. So, so basically, they didn't really talk about who. It wasn't really about who won or lost the series. They didn't talk about, but there was 1,000 fans that showed up to watch it.
Yeah.
And so after their practice weeks and doing this practice thing. They found out that we're going to ended up playing up the against the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are the Toronto Maple Leafs are just sort of we're not going to go as in deep with them as we did with the Maroons last week, but the Toronto Maple Leafs are just consistently one of the best teams in the NHL at this time. They won one Stanley Cup in the 1931-32 Stanley Cup, but they repeatedly got close. I mean, every year they were always in the thick of it. They were in the thick of it, of course, this year. Now they're in the Stanley Cup Finals against the Wings. In brief, and I did a couple different graphics. Well, one of the graphics are to show that from that same Senators team, 2 of the guys on that 1927 Senators was with Jack Adams. That played on the Jack Adams team in 1927 with him,
right?
Which is Frank King Clancy, who's and also. Who's the other guy we have on there? Who's the other guy I got highlighted on
He's
there?
coaching against guys that he had in there.
That was on the same team as him. Who's the other guy highlighted up in the...
let me grab it
I
here.
think it's Bush.
Trying to pull it up.
Who's the other type?
Frank Finnegan?
Yes, Frank Finnegan. There we go, yeah.
And,
so he's on...
Frank and Frank. Frank Finnegan and Clancy. Yeah.
Yes, so those two guys are both those guys played with Jack Adams on that 1927 team, and now they're on this 35 roster playing against him in this championship. And then so the next graphic we have with the Maple Leafs is just to kind of give it in brief how the strength of this team was they had 5 guys on this team that were in the top 100 players in the history of the NHL. That's what this graphic shows. We've got 5 guys.
The colored one?
Yeah, the one with the where it's got the 3 guys kind of shoulder to shoulder. It's like all Maple Leaf players. The top header says top 100 NHL players. There you
gotcha.
Go. Okay, so they've got the three guys we have on the top of the graphic. It was called the kid line, which is we talked about the S line last week. And whenever you got a great line, they usually have a name, so it kind of relates to the public.
Grind line.
Yeah, exactly. Grind line.
Russian
all
five.
Russian 5, exactly.
Yeah.
So this line is just an absolutely legendary line. It's called the kid line.
Okay.
And I think it's because they were all just kids when they all came up, which was
whippersnappers.
And all 3 of this kid line they're all in this ranked by this. The article came out in 1998 by the Hockey News.
Yeah.
Ranking the top 100 NHL players of all time, and Charlie Conacher was ranked number 30. All 3 of these next 2 guys I'm saying are all on this kid line.
Yep.
Charlie Conacher was ranked number 36.
Yep.
Busher Jackson was ranked number 55. Joe Primo was ranked number 92.
There you go.
And so Charlie Conacher is also the brother of another Conacher that we're talking about, which was Lionel Conacher from the last show.
Yeah.
The guy that we already said how much I love that guy. And this is Charlie. This is Charlie. This is another Conacher. So there's a Conacher brother facing again.
So you got George on here, and you got Frank.
Yes, and so the other 2 guys ranked
So
the other 2 guys ranked in the top 100 that we have on the team was Frank King Clancy, who was ranked number 52, and Busher Jackson, who's ranked number 55. Busher Jackson is ranked number 55.
So this is who we're.
I already talked about Busher. George Hainsworth, the goalie. Their goalie was number 46, ranked number 46 of all.
So
time.
This is who we're up against.
They got 5 guys. Yeah.
That ended up like in the all-time rated top 100.
Top 100. And we mentioned Frank Finnegan that played with Adams. He wasn't in the Hall of Fame, but he should have been. He wasn't in the top 100.
Somebody should be arguing for that.
Yeah, Frank Finnegan's awesome. He wasn't in the top 100, but he's a great player. I mean, the whole roster. The point is that the Maple Leafs were star-studded.
This is not a walk in the park.
Yeah, this was not some lucky team that squeaked by. This was the Maple Leafs were a tough
I was going to say,
squad.
because you said the previous game was pretty much because they set the top 2 teams against each other, but the Maple Leafs.
They're studs.
No slouches themselves.
No, absolutely
either.
not.
Right.
I mean, really, there was no teams that were just total slouches.
Who did the Leafs play to get past to face the Wings?
They beat the Americans in this, and to be honest with you, I forgot who they won in the first scrum. I think that they beat the Blackhawks in the first in that.
I was going to say, what happened to the Blackhawks? Because they were giving us so much hard time.
Yeah, I think the Maple Leafs knocked them off.
They took out the Blackhawks?
Because I think what ended up happening was, I got to go back and look at it again, but I think with the way, because there was 3 teams that finished second in the American division, so they needed a 4th team to pair up for a semifinal for that first round, and so they brought over the Maple Leafs that played, and then they emerged from. I think it was only and so and that's how they ended up emerging. Like the Maple Leafs won that scrum, and then they faced the Americans in the quarterfinals. And that's how they ended up.
And now we got.
them.
And now we got them.
Yeah. So now we're facing the Maple Leafs.
And so this is a 5-game series, 7-game series.
Yeah, best of 5. So
best of 5.
Yes, they got to win 3.
All right. So we're up again. We could play. We got to play at least 3 games.
Yes. So exactly. So game 1 is in Detroit, and in the game once again it's a new record. The record that they have 12,763 fans for
piling
the 10.
them in, man.
Exactly.
Stack them like cordwood.
So this game breaks the record of the previous game.
All right.
So one game later they set a new all-time record. And so what's so cool about this is that Bucko McDonald scores the first goal of the game. Bucko starts the scoring in the second in this first game.
Hell yeah.
Very first.
Bucko.
So in the first 8, so the Red Wings were going to win this game 3-1. And all 3 Red Wings goals were scored in the first 8 minutes of the first period. So the stadium is just absolutely rocking.
Oh, yeah.
They're scoring, and the stadium is just absolutely rocking. And so they end up winning this game 3-1. But I wanted to read the score is cool, but I want to just kind of get this. There's this amazing article usually we got Leo McDonald, but Bob Murphy's a great writer himself for the Detroit Times. And this article is so great because it takes you right into that stadium. I'm telling you, anybody that's listening to this, sit back. I'll even give you guys a second.
Words, man.
Sit back, relax for a second. I'm going to take you back in time with this article.
And they do. They really do.
They totally do.
This
That's what I love about
is like
this.
So colorful of the time.
Because the journalism was designed that was the primary vehicle of information. There was no TV.
Right.
In hockey, and the radio was incredibly rare, and so the writers were the ones that had to take you into that game. And so that language that they use in the description is that's what they did to take you there. And this article right here is as much or better than any article we've read to take you right into this game. So I'm gonna without any further ado. So article came out on April 6, 1936. Bob Murphy of the Detroit Times. And the title of the article is "Fans Give McDonald Tremendous Ovation." Keep in mind, this is the first goal of the game. So there have been some grand and glorious ovations thundered inside the walls of Olympia in years past, but probably never a more prolonged or deafening salute than the one which followed Buckle McDonald's goal in the first period of last night's Stanley Cup opener between the Red Wings and Toronto Maple Leafs. Like a huge rolling ball of fire, Bucko the Socko came storming out of center ice towards a rolling puck. Andy Blair, the slightly bald defenseman, was charging towards the same object. Bucko's charge quickened, and his stick was skimming the rubber along the ice. Like a snapping, starved wolf, Blair challenged him. They were moving fast, moving toward Toronto territory in the pot of gold that waits at the end of the hockey rainbow. The bulging form of McDonald crashed against Blair. Now he was out in front by a step. While waddling crazily, he swung his stick, and the puck sailed past the bewildered George Hainsworth, landing high in the corner of the net. It would have been a masterpiece of workmanship under any circumstances, but coming while the Wings were a man short with Larry Ory in the box, it sent the huge crowd into a state of vocal convulsions that made the ice palace quiver and tremble. It was the mightiest salute ever to beat down on the eardrums of the all-conquering Red Wings. The rising crescendo of sound continued for what seemed like minutes. Larry Ory was beating the stick against the boards of the penalty box. On the ice, the Red Wolves showered the giant kid with hugs, backslaps, and embraces. Captain Doug Young slapped his defense mate with a fond fierceness. Normie Smith, back in the nets, was prancing back and forth, tapping his stick against the ice. But the roar of the crowd continued. Men forgot dignity as they stood waving hats and screaming. And the dear little ladies, God bless them, yip-yapped and tugged at whomever happened to be closest by them. My, what an ovation, declared Jack Adams in the dressing room long after it was over. That was the darndest moment of my life, admitted Bucko. If I felt so silly when it was all over, I didn't know whether or not to laugh or cry. The crowd kept roaring, and I felt numb all over. It's a sensation you can't describe. Yet, yes, if the walls of Olympia could talk, they probably would tell you that the mightiest ovation that is ever known was experienced last night when Bucko McDonald scored the first goal of the Stanley Cup Series.
Oh,
that's an article.
Yeah.
That's an article.
Yeah.
Okay, so now a follow up to that is they're talking with Bucko after the game about the goal because it was just so cool. You know,
it's shorthanded too.
It was the team was shorthanded. Bucko scores his first goal. He's only scored I think 2 goals in the entire year. That's why he kind of reminds me like a Brandon McCarthy. McCarthy is that where he's scoring these playoff goals like he's not like a huge goal scorer.
Yeah.
So,
Darren, right?
Darren McCarty. That's what I'm saying. He kind of reminds me of that because he's scoring these crazy goals. He's not a big goal scorer, and he's and he's the first goal of the Stanley Cup Finals opens it up. It's Bucko.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's whamming it away.
We gotta get McCarty in.
Yeah. So anyway, this is once again shows Bucko's personality. I love this article too. So this again by Bob Murphy, and it's from the same day. It's another article that he's just pounding out ink. You know, there's 2 completely different articles by Bob Murphy in the same day. So all right, so Bucko shows him how. Bucko the Socko McDonald was the center of attention, and how he eats it up. His goal coming while the Wings were a man short put Detroit ahead in the first 5 minutes. Just like hitting a home run in the World Series, eh, kid, said Adams. The old change of pace did it, confided Bucko. I started for the puck, then stopped and started again. I had Conacher fooled completely. If I'm talking for publication, you can just say for me that it was labeled for a goal as soon as I put my stick against it. How did I shake loose of Blair? I just gave him the old cross-check. Confidentially, though, if this isn't for publication, I didn't know where the darn puck was going. I just whammed away and prayed. One of the first things Bucko did when he left the dressing room was wire the little invalid kid, Jackie Dunn of Buffalo, New York. From the day I met Jackie, good luck has come my way, he explained. I knew the kid when I played with Buffalo. He picked me out as his hero, and I made up my mind to try and bring a little sunshine into his life. Things have been breaking great for me since that day. Yep, here goes a wire to Jackie, and I know he'll be happy, almost as happy as I am right now.
So he sends a telegram to a kid that he's been communicating with that's in a hospital.
That's Bucko, man.
Oh my God, that's like cartoon crap.
Exactly. But the cool thing I love about that article is where he's like, I had it. It was a goal. The second I put it on my stick. And from the moment he goes, if this is for publication, put it like this.
Yeah.
From the moment I touched the puck, I was skating all in. And I was about to score.
Hit it hard, wish it
He's
well.
Like, if this isn't for publication, just let everybody know. He's like, don't tell anybody. But I just whammed away. Like I had no idea.
Hit it hard, wish it well.
Yeah,
that's
exactly. He's like,
that's hockey in a nutshell.
I know, but that's
hit it hard, wish it well.
What's funny is how he's saying, if this isn't for publication, just to let you know, I had no idea what.
And he writes them both.
He
writes them both.
And the guy included both. Yeah. So, anyways, that's what I love. So it kind of showed the color of that, of that game and how crazy. The fans were going insane. Bucko opens the scoring. He's already a fan favorite. He's the guy that brings home the first goal. So, anyways, so moving right along here, we have we go into game two. We go into game two of the Stanley Cup Finals.
They won that first one.
They won the won the first one 3-1, right?
All right.
So we go into the second game, and this is a 9-4 victory for the Red Wings.
Wow!
Okay, in front of 12,500 fans.
That's a bloodbath
in Detroit. It's such a bloodbath that it's the all-time most goals ever scored in an NHL playoff game. Red Wings set a record for the most goals ever. It's an absolute rout of the Maple Leafs in this game at Olympia. And so you have just a cavalcade of goal scorers.
And people don't know about this season, what?
No. Exactly.
Go.
Johnny Sorrell, 2 goals. Marty Berry scores a goal. Gord Pettinger, who's started out with the Wings, went down, got dropped to the Olympics, and came back up and has been playing great ever since.
Yeah.
Scores 2 goals. Buckle McDonald with the second goal. Wally Kilrea with a goal. Herbie Lewis with a goal. I mean, it's just a goal-scoring goal fest. So both, and I forgot to mention in the previous game that Wally Kilrea also scored in that first game as well. So Buck in the first game it was Buckle. So the 3 goal scorers were Buckle McDonald, Sid Howe, and Wally Kilrea. And then in the second game we've got Wally Kilrea and Bucko scoring again. So and Wally didn't score hardly at all in the season either. He was more, they call him the pest because he was just more of like he played, just kind of did everything. He was, he's a master of everything, but not really like a big goal scorer.
Right.
But here's these 2 guys that are like rarely scoring in the regular season, and both of them are getting huge, right?
Yeah, big. I mean, a goal in the playoffs is a big goal.
Big time, yeah. And so I wanted to kind of touch on just briefly about Wally Kilrea here, because again, he's one of my favorite players too. And Wally, Heck Kilrea is his older brother, and Heck already is a star in this year. But Wally's had a tough time of it his entire career thus far, and so he really makes his bones with the Red Wings in this season. But there's a little brief quote here to show how important Wally was in this playoff series and for the Red Wings. So this is Bob Murphy again. This is April 8th, 1936. And so Bob Murphy's a short quote. 2 nights later, Adams threw a spasm that frightened the whole town of Montreal while gushing over Wally the Pest Kilrea. My nomination for the greatest hero of the entire playoff series. Wally's found himself, said Jack. He'll be a star from now on.
Nice.
So, but the writer, Bob Murphy, actually says right there, he actually says, my nomination for the greatest hero of the entire playoff series. Like, all these other guys are playing so great. Normie's playing great. Buckle's playing great. Sid Howe's scoring. These
and
guys
Wally's one of those guys that came up from the Olympics.
He was the captain of the Olympics.
Right.
In this inter-city series, he's the guy that helped the Olympics beat the Red Wings. And this is, so now he's like, basically like a second or third line center.
Sure.
And so he's they call him the pest because he's just all over the place, just doing the dirty work, And so, but the fact that this guy, this kind of like, this cavalcade of stars, is Bob Murphy saying this is my nomination for the greatest hero of the entire thing. That's what I'm saying. It's good to kind of mention these guys that like that
it's
they
not
just
always
never get mentioned.
Getting the puck in the net. It's the guy that's like out there.
Exactly, grinding away,
making it happen, and throwing the other side.
But in this case, he actually had scored his second goal at this point, so he's actually kind of a star. He's actually starring in that role.
Both roles,
yeah, both roles. So anyways, So game 2 they win 9-4. It's a complete shellacking of the Maple Leafs. And everything, the Wings are just totally ripping through because at this point, so if you remember going back a little bit in the regular season, they won the last 2 games of the regular season, beginning with the Blackhawks. They were coming off this horrible loss streak, but they won their last 2 games. They beat the Blackhawks and the Americans in the final 2 games of the regular season. Then they sweep the Maroons in the first 3 games, and now they've got 2 games under their belt against Toronto.
So they only need 1 more against Toronto.
Yeah, but think about that for a second. That's a 7-game win streak. That's the longest win streak in their entire playoffs.
Here comes the octopus.
The 7-game win streak was the longest win streak of the entire year.
Jeez.
And it came while they were on the most important stretch with against the Blackhawks all the way through the Maple Leafs.
The most challenging teams,
Yeah, this is the longest winning streak they'd had all year. And I forgot the exact year, but I think it was, I did the math on it. I went back through years. I wrote it, it's in the books.
Playoff winning streak?
No, but like winning streak at all for the Red Wings, whether you're talking about playoffs or regular season. I forgot the year, but I think it's like 1931. It was the longest winning streak going all the way back like 5 years.
Oh.
And it came in the midst of the playoffs in the most important games, beginning with the big Blackhawks game we were talking about, see? So, like, there's 7 games in a win streak. They're 1 win away from a Stanley Cup Championship, okay? And notice how I said we weren't going to talk about the final game of the Red Wings Championship, right?
Yeah.
We've got 1 more game to talk about tonight.
Oh, we do have 1 more game. All right, spoiler alert. Do the math.
Yeah.
They may not win this one.
But I didn't mean to go that far.
Fair play.
Yeah, I didn't mean to tease it that much.
I'm
but
good
I'm
with
going.
math.
But I
I'm
had
good
to.
with math. I'm
All
good with math. Let's go.
All right. So anyways, in this case they traveled to Toronto. Okay, so they're playing in Toronto.
So the first 2 were Detroit.
First 2 was in Detroit, and they traveled to Toronto.
And then the second 2 are slated for. The second 2 are slated for
so the first
Toronto.
2 in Detroit, second 2 in Toronto,
number 5 if needed
would be back in
Detroit.
Detroit. Yes.
Okay.
So anyways, so they're in Toronto, right? And this game begins basically like every other game that they have begun thus far.
Okay.
Thus far in this playoffs and everything.
Bucko?
Well, in this case, close, but Scotty Bowman in this one
scores
his first goal. Against against the Maple, his first goal, I believe, of the playoffs. But anyways, Bowman's a guy that doesn't score very much anyways. He also is one of these guys that never scores. He's a defenseman, so he rarely scores. So anyway, starts off with a guy that doesn't normally scoring the first goal of the game. Yeah.
Scotty, no relation, Bowman.
Yes.
All right.
And so anyways, again, a guy that rarely scores is opening up the scoring. That's like kind of how the other games started with Bucko and Wally Kilrea scoring. So this is the first goal of the game opens up with a guy that rarely scores, scoring the first goal, just like these other things, right? Bam, Wings are up 1-0. So that's in the first period. Second period, Mud Brunito, who's already scored 2 or 3 goals in the playoffs thus far. He had a big goal against Chicago Blackhawks. This like clutch. He's the guy that won the longest game ever.
Yeah.
Mud Brunito scores a goal in the second period. Bam, Mud's clicks. The goals got Red Wings up 2-0. Right, second period. Third period, the Ottawa Assassin, Sid Howe, comes in the third period goal. Bam, clicks, 3-0 Red Wings.
Oh my God.
Third period.
Third
period.
Holy crap!
So this thing is about to be wrapped up.
This is
right?
it.
The Stanley Cup. The Stanley Cup is
on the ropes, man.
Stanley Cup's brought out close to the ice. You know what I mean? This thing is like the fans of Toronto start to kind of fade away. Start to want to get home, and they beat the traffic and that. So I mean, this game's over, right? I mean, for the most part. So 2 minutes later, Joe Primo scores a goal.
Oh.
For the Maple Leafs.
Damn you, Primo.
So it breaks Normie Smith's shutout. There's a cheer, there's a little cheer that goes up from the fans. Great, we just broke. So at least we're not getting shut out.
We're not shut out. Yay!
So and then 2 minutes after that, Regis Pep Kelly for Toronto scores a second goal.
No, Regis.
Yeah, so he scores a goal. Pep Kelly for the Maple Leafs scores a second goal. So now it's 3-2. So now the fans are sort of back in it, right?
All right.
So with 42 seconds left. 42 seconds left in the game.
This is so Red Wings.
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
42 seconds left in the game. Pep Kelly scores again to equalize it at 3-3. And then 30 seconds into overtime, Buzz Bowl, game winner for Toronto. Game 4-3 Maple Leafs. They called it the miracle win.
It's elimination. It
was, I think it was
sudden death elimination overtime.
Yes. So it's like they scored.
That's like dodgeball.
So they scored because the Maple Leafs are on this crazy assault where they're just
right.
It's all they're doing is just throwing forwards on the ice. They're not playing any defense, and their offense.
Right.
Normie Smith, as much as people are like, oh, Normie faded at the end there. Normie had 22 saves in that third period.
Right.
That's almost a full game worth of saves.
So for every save that goalie made, there were 5 guys that missed a block.
That's
before.
what I'm saying. There was 4 or 5 saves for every goal he gave up. He was under a relentless assault by one of the this powerhouse offensive Maple Leafs.
It's a team, fellas.
And they started clicking, so and then plus when the Red Wings got on their heels a little bit, it was just goal. There was this fluke. But there was one thing. So I want to read. But there was something that happened during this game that is one of the most fascinating things that I've ever heard in sports anywhere. This is like people. There's like these things that happen in sports, like Babe Ruth calling his shot. There's like where he pointed at the fence in the World Series and they called a home run.
Yeah,
and these things that sort of blend the boundaries of magic, myth, in whatever mysticism and like folklore and all these different things that happened. That is just one of
Did it really happen?
When this comes to the movie, it's going to be one of the most fascinating things, and I'm going to introduce it through the article because I wasn't there. I'm going to let Bob Murphy sort of tell you what happened. So, anyways, this article comes out on April 10th, 1936, and his article header is Conn Smythe calls Leafs win a miracle. Conn Smythe was the general manager and manager of the Maple Leafs at this time.
Right.
So Conn Smythe. So it was a miracle of hockey. Connie Smythe, the Maple Leaf boss, repeated it over and over again in the Toronto dressing room following his team's 4-3 victory over the Red Wings last night at Maple Leaf Gardens. All was confusion as the Leafs came plunging through the hysterical crowd that lined the corridor leading to their quarters. "We live to fight another day," said Joe Primo, swinging around Buzz Bull's neck. It was Buzz who shoved home the winning goal after 21 seconds of play in the overtime. Pep Kelly gets even. So Pep Kelly, greatest of all the Leaf heroes, was almost mobbed. "You evened up with Bucko McDonald for that terrible bumping around he gave you the last time in Detroit," one of Pep's teammates shouted. He was referring to last game of the regular campaign when McDonald bumped Pep so viciously that he staggered to the Toronto bench, very ill and badly shaken up. "It was around Bucko that Pep skated for the tying goal last night. I don't deny it. Smythe kept repeating. "It was a hockey miracle, but I'm proud of them for fighting back when all seemed lost. It was a great finish, the greatest ever." So photographers boomed away, fans fought for admittance to the dressing room, and an hour after game time, even when most of the Leafs had departed, the crazed mob continued to mill around the gardens.
They're that excited down 2-1.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, now they've evened it because there was a miracle. They just thought the game was over, right?
Yeah.
So it's hold on one second. So it says number 2. Okay. So I'll just keep on going here. So it says old George Hainsworth, the Toronto goalie, was all smiles. Probably many of the same fans who had been condemning him for the Leafs' failure before last night's game were the first to offer congratulations. "Our spirits are up again," said Red Horner. "We'll go now." The one Leaf who was quiet and apparently less enthused than any of the others was Charlie Conacher, who to date has failed to show anything worthy of the reputation he sports. And he can blame Herbie Lewis for this state of affairs. The Red Wings dressed in almost complete silence. Doug Young talked to a friend in low tones in one corner of the room. Jack Adams sat on a trunk saying nothing. Normie Smith undressed slowly, looking at the floor. It was Ebby Goodfellow who first broke the silence. "Say," shouted Ebby, tucking his shirt into his pants. "What the hell? The pressure is still on those guys. We'll get them Saturday night." Adams came off the trunk with a thump. "We won 7 straight games," he shouted. "The law of averages was against us. We'll take care of them Saturday night," inserted Johnny Sorrell. The Wings then completed dressing and strolled out one by one to go to their hotel. "Forget this one," was owner Jim Norris's advice. Now, so anyways, the final section here. This is this incredible moment. Okay, so a rabbit's foot. A most unusual thing happened just a second or so before Pep Kelly shot the tying goal with 42 seconds left to play in the third period. A young kid threw a rabbit's foot from a place above the Detroit goal. The rabbit's foot landed on the wire just back of Smith. Several newspapermen noticed it. To be sure their eyes were not betraying them, one of their number went onto the ice at intermission time and verified the report. It really was a rabbit's foot. There's a kid threw a rabbit's foot in the back of the net at the exact moment that game tying goal went in.
Oh man!
So there was a rabbit's foot thrown into that net, and there was another mention of that rabbit's foot too. Somewhere in here, somewhere I got them both in the book, but anyways, you can see. So there's a rabbit's foot thrown at the moment. And so what's cool is I got a photo. We have a photo I brought. It was one of the last slides.
It's been up there since you were while
okay,
you were
good,
reading
yeah. And so this photo, they took a photo at the moment that goal went in.
Yeah.
And so like I've spent so much time looking at this photo, seeing if I can see
because there's old timey specs and
totally
things
grainy,
on it. It's
yeah.
Is that it? Is that it?
That's what I'm saying. You're like, there's all these little specks on the back of the net. You're going, where's the? You there's no way you can see it on the net. It's too raggedy, But a kid threw a rabbit's foot on the back of that net. Can you imagine seeing that in the movie?
Oh my God!
Can you imagine the setup for that?
Just the slow mo of the rabbit foot going and the
like
play unfolding.
But imagine starting out. That's how I wrote it in the movie. Is the little kid's like thumbing a rabbit's foot, like with his dad or something, and in the movie they're showing this game unfold.
Yeah.
And then that kid throws a rabbit's foot on the ice, and it's like this was a true story. This happened like this, And so there's a rabbit's foot thrown on the ice, and it's sucking the net at the moment they scored that goal. So, anyways, that's pretty much where I went. So that's what was also key about that little article there is the talking about how the Red Wings were basically in this locker room and they're fairly dejected. They can hear the craziness going on and everybody going, has the momentum shifted?
You got this.
And that's why Ebby was so key, and it shows.
But they still have an away game to win.
Exactly, but it shows the leadership of Ebby Goodfeldt. This is the guy that's going, let's go, boys. The law, we lost a game, so what? We've won 7 straight. We're going to be back in it.
Playoffs game.
Exactly. So he's like, let this one go.
Yeah.
Man. This is then that says him saying that that's Ebby.
Right.
That's Ebby that steps up in that
captain,
moment.
Man. That's good captain.
Well, the thing is, he's not the captain.
He
in this
wasn't
moment,
the captain,
but he was that. But he was that guy.
Right.
He gave up his captainship just for. Because exactly, we did an entire show about Ebby giving up his captaincy, but it didn't mean he wasn't the top leader of his team, and so that's just a little glimpse into that component.
We got one more game to go.
There's one more game to go, but there's one more little thing I wanted to mention here, as it relates to this whole thing, and so actually I want to see. I think I found that section with the other rabbit's foot mention. So actually, it's same thing. It's Bob Murphy saying the same thing.
Yep.
Anyways, but this is what I want to leave off with, really, with this for this episode, for this story, is that on the same day, we talk about how the Stanley Cup was brought out to the ice and everything, and they're basically this game's a foregone conclusion, right?
Sure, yeah.
So on the day that all these articles that came out, which was April 10th, 1936, in that same paper. There was an advertisement in this Detroit paper. Sell banquet tickets at 2 places. So listen to this article header. There's no author, but it came out on the April 10th.
Right.
Tickets for the City of Champions banquet to be held at the Masonic Temple in Detroit, April 18th, may be purchased at the Detroit Times lobby and the cigar stand of the Book Cadillac Hotel. This banquet will honor all of Detroit's champions, including the Detroit Tigers, Red Wings, Olympics, Joe Louis, Detroit Lions, and a score of individual title holders. The cost of tickets is $3. It is possible to reserve tables for 10 or 20 for groups. Reservations may be made by the Detroit Times or by calling Cherry 8800 line 342. So what's key to see from this is that the Detroit Times had just announced that the City of Champions, the Champions Day celebration was full tilt.
You boys better win.
Now we're at a moment where these guys are sitting the thing out. They were expecting them to win this.
It's not cinched.
It's not cinched. So
imagine if the Red Wings
the Red Wings don't win the championship.
Oh my God, yeah.
They can't walk into because they'd won the President's Trophy because they technically had won the NHL because they'd beaten the first place Canadian division.
Right.
And they'd won the American division.
But they didn't won the Cup.
They had the President's Cup. That ain't the Stanley Cup.
You
can't walk into the Champions Day banquet where they go, well, we didn't finish the Stanley Cup, but we got the President's Cup, which is the next best thing.
We got this nice participatory ribbon.
Yes, this party is for champions only.
Oh boy!
And so and that's what I'm saying.
You got to win. They took Joe Louis off the plaque.
Well, off the plaque, but not he. But he was the guest of honor. But the plaque didn't come out until the next year.
Oh,
the plaque didn't come out. Not the next year. It was It was 4 or 5 months after the
fair
dinner.
play,
Yeah,
fair
it was.
play.
It was the plaque was a later thing that came out. So this was April, April 18th. In the Cherry Festival, I believe it's in the summer. So it was like 3 months later.
Yeah.
So it was at least a couple months after this. But Joe Louis was the guest of honor at Champions Day.
Yeah.
So he was there. Oh, he was a signature featured guest at this. And so that's what I'm saying, though, is that this banquet, the Champions Day banquet, which we did, our thing at the museum,
Sure, yeah.
to commemorate.
They were selling tickets.
They're already starting to sell tickets
they
for it.
They got another game.
Now
to
the
win.
Red Wings don't just like hoping to win and bring home City of Champions. They have to do it, and that's what's never one of the things that, without understanding the story and having never considered all of this stuff,
Right.
think about what potentially could have happened. If the Red Wings didn't win this.
Right.
Now, the pressure that's on them, they are expected to bring home the Stanley Cup now. And they're not only that to bring the Stanley Cup home, they have to do it after just losing the worst heartbreaking game of all time. They were so
it was in their hands.
It was in their hands, and they gave it. So now the mentality is there a shift in momentum?
Right.
We're in the other team's
Right.
home stadium. The other team's fans are amped up.
Right.
They got new life for the Maple Leafs. They only got to win 2 more games.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying. Like, it's never been considered. Like, look at this moment, and this team is like, for them to come back, from this.
Right.
You know what I mean? To understand it. Like, can you imagine? Can you see?
Well,
this?
if they come back from this, right?
Yeah.
We'll see next
see
game.
It. Yeah. So but anyways, but like I say, imagine this in the movie, right?
Yeah. Oh
my
my
God.
God.
Where
yeah.
you take this team
There's
all the way
tension.
through this,
The tension.
and you leave off here.
They're teetering.
Right. Exactly. They're
Yeah.
like, you're leaving them like,
next week
Yes.
on Detroit City of Champions.
Yeah. But we're not going to be talking about
Will the Red Wings rebound?
But they won't hear about it next week because we're going to save that. We're going to tease them like
so on that Netflix
now.
special next week on the City of Champions. Will the Red Wings rebound?
Next week we're going to be talking about Joe Louis. We're done with the Red Wings until we get back to
the final games for each team.
Games for each team. But that's what I'm saying. We want everybody to kind of know the lay of the land before it.
Right.
These are the situations that all these teams are in their own particular one.
Mm-hmm.
Tigers have lost Hank Greenberg. They're hanging in there. They're playing the Cubs, who had beat them 3 times in the World Series already, or 2 times in the World Series previous to this. Tigers they'd lost the 34 World Series.
Yeah.
So the Tigers got their own issues. The Lions are, this is they're just struggling for relevancy in Detroit. They've just come off of their own 5-game unbeaten streak to storm their way into the NFL championship. Joe Louis for his biggest thing we're going to get into, but Joe Louis, he's fighting for. Trying to be this hero in the African American community.
Right.
Joe Louis has got his own thing. He's carrying a tremendous. We'll show him he's carrying a tremendous burden. And the Red Wings, now they're the last team. They're playing with everything we just laid out here. So that's what I'm saying. When we finally get to there, when you understand the situations of all of them and what they did to finally bring those home. It's just there's no greater sport. What sports story is greater than this?
It's a championship beyond a championship.
Exactly.
It really
What sports story?
And it was
it
was their first championship.
It was their
for
first.
each.
Yes.
The first Cup, the first World Series, first NFL.
Yeah, and the Olympics are hanging right there with them. They're winning in the same clip as the Red Wings right now.
Man, oh man.
So.
All right.
Yeah,
hey, we've had a bunch of people checking in.
Yeah.
Robert Gray, Catherine Mitchell,
Robert,
Tammy
friend from the old
was
school
there.
Robert. We love
John
Robert.
Hoffman. He made a lot of the graphic stuff. So anyway, thanks for people
everybody for watching. Guys.
checking in and thumbing up and
appreciate it. Yeah,
all
we
this
appreciate
stuff.
all the likes and everything.
So follow. iTunes is a new that you don't subscribe anymore. You follow. So follow or subscribe.
Yeah, YouTube. We got
whatever
YouTube.
Whatever
YouTube's
the button
great.
says. Do that.
We have our
and
YouTube show. You can listen to it live on YouTube or
leave a comment.
Watch the archive shows on YouTube and all that too.
Yeah, we appreciate you. DetroitCityOfChampions.com. Get connected with all the stuff, and then our Facebook page. So we'll do it again. We got boxing. We're going to unfold boxing in the 1930s, and
this is going to be fun. The boxing is going to be great. We
take
love
us
boxing.
into Joe.
Yep.
And all right, so we'll do that next time. And till then, keep your stick on the ice.